My name is Dr. Jenna Ross with Renew Performance, and you are listening to the S.M.E Stories podcast.
You are now listening to the next great small business podcast. Welcome to the S.M.E Stories podcast, where it is all about small businesses in Canada. And here's your host, Ken Alfred.
Hey everybody, thanks for on the show. We got a great episode today with Dr. Jenna Ross. Now, Dr. Jenna Ross is the owner and founder of Renew Performance. So a little bit about Dr. Jenna Ross. So she is a certified mental performance consultant and licensed mental health counselor. She's a veteran, a mom, and a pro bodybuilder. Her philosophy motto is the mind is the strongest muscle in the body. So I actually met Jenna Ross through a different podcast I co-host, is the Jaybird Watching podcast, where myself and the other co-hosts actually had her on to talk about sports psychology, specifically related to baseball, because this is about the Toronto Blue Jays, since I'm from Toronto. So it's nice to actually have her on the show so we can talk more about not just running, that we've talked about coaching business in the past, but this is more very specific to sports performance, but also personal performance as well. So we're going to be having a great time with Dr. Jenna Ross today. So sit back and absorb. So before we get into our tips from the pro segment, I always like to ask, what has been your biggest failure, but also your biggest success so far?
Yeah, failure wise, like I talked about getting this is silly. um,
Silly
but
it up.
yeah, so I ended up renting an office space, right? And my business was starting to go up, so I thought it was a safe thing to do. But that was kind of I guess unnecessary, right? So I made an unnecessary decision to do this. And now I look back and I'm like, I needed to have my feet further underneath me before I did that. So I think it's just, in general speaking, like it's not necessarily that one action. It was kind of like, be patient. Like not being patient with things was probably my biggest mistake so far, is like, you have to let things play out. And I'm the type of person where I get really like anxious. Like I feel like I should be further along. And so I think that's a lot of entrepreneurs, is like, they're very hard on themselves as far as like what to expect. And so you start thinking about all these things that you want to do and get done and where you want to be. And it's like, well, I'm not there yet. So I think it's, don't allow yourself to become impatient in the process, because that's where failure can happen. And I say that from my own experience, and learning from that mistake is kind of just be patient and let things play out.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the challenge is that, especially if you think from the podcasting or the YouTube channel point of view, I might be like, man, I gotta be like Joe Rogan, where he's getting like 11 million downloads per episode, or 15 million subscribers on YouTube. And I'm here with like I don't know, I think I have like 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. And I'm like, man, I'm so far. You know what I was looking forward to, Dr. Ross? I was like, I had to Google. I'm like, when do you get the actual, little plaque? Where you shows all those little plaques for YouTube and stuff like that. I'm thinking, all right, I got over 1,000, right? So am I going to get one of those little mini plaques? I look at it, 100,000. That's the first one you have to get just to get the plaque. I'm like, maybe I can pay someone to make it for me and just stick it in the background there.
Right. Right. But you talk about that and it can be so discouraging, because it is, sometimes it feels like, oh, there's such a long way to go. But then you also look back and you're like, man, like I am further than I think. So yeah, it
Exactly.
is. Yeah, it is. It's a constant learning process.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to cut you off there. What has been your big success so far? Because I think we talked about your failure. What about your success?
Yeah. My biggest success has been, I've made several meaningful partnerships with some different organizations that have really um, boosted to different athletes, different organizations. And so for me has been, to be honest, a lifesaver to have that partnership with these other people that are like, hey, we have an athlete, we send them to you, right? And just being able to offer that service, and it's training facilities, it's recruiting agencies, it's different partnerships that have athletes, and that's my audience. And so that's been probably my biggest success, is to make those connections and really grow that relationship. If that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, do you need an error-free website? Do you need transcription that's accurate and on time? Would you like to remove noise from your video or audio recording? Do you need a spokesperson for your business? If so, we can help. At Northway Capital Group, we are happy to announce that we are now providing website testing services, audio transcriptions, and audio cleanup, as well as spokesperson services. We would love to help you on your next project. Contact us for more information at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com.
Now it's time for tips from the pro.
All right, now we're going to do a tips from the pro now. So we're going to talk about, for those who are looking to get into a similar space to Dr. Ross, and just some general things like that. So, all right, question number one. When I'm starting my clinic, or at least before I even start my clinic, what is the biggest mistake you notice your clients are making?
So my clients will, and I always give them this now kind of warning, because they will work with me for about usually about 3 to 4 sessions. And then they really start to notice, oh, I feel better. Like I feel like I have control of whatever issue it was that they came to see me for. And they start to see the improvement. And so they back off. And then they kind of like tailor, and it's like, hey, do you want to schedule a session? And then it just never becomes a priority like it was to begin with. And so I've noticed from that I will tell clients, I will tell them, it's just like when you go to the gym, right? You don't just show up at the gym and, do 10 bicep curls and suddenly your biceps are bigger. Like it takes repetition after repetition after repetition. And so that's the same concept with my services. And when I work with clients is telling them, hey, just because you feel a different, like you feel like you're seeing results does not mean that it's been solidified, and to continue going through the process to get to a really good place. Like you'll notice it, but it's kind of like when you change up your diet, right? Like when you change up your nutrition and after a week, you're like, oh, wow, I've dropped 5 pounds. Like that sudden,
I'm done.
change. Yeah, right? Like I've dropped 5 pounds. Well, it's just water weight. Like that's it. It's water weight. It's not going to last. And so it's kind of the same concept with what I do in my services is giving that client kind of the heads up as far as like, hey, this is how this process works. And so I know you're going to get to that point, but let's keep going past it. And so I kind of give them the heads up, and then we work through that as it comes up.
Yeah, I think that education process that you have there, right? Just to tell them,
Mm-hmm.
because I think what people think is when they have a session with yourself, is that they're gonna unload everything off their chest or off their mind of here's everything that that's going on with you right now, and
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be solved fairly quickly. So sometimes, like you said, maybe by session 3 or 4, maybe the client's already felt I've let them know everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So why do I need to continue? Because Dr. Ross has already given me some steps to follow, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
routines or different mindsets. So then I should be good, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's that whole thing. Like you got to give it some time, right? Not to say
Mm-hmm.
it's a permanent solution and you're going to be doing it for 15 years, although it would be good for Dr. Ross if you're the client for
Yes.
15 years. But to know, because when I used to be a personal trainer myself, I used to tell
Mm-hmm.
my clients, look, I look at when I'm working with them, they have a goal. My
Yeah.
goal for you is by the time our sessions are done, so whether they bought 10, 20, 30, whatever, is that by the end of that, you should be able to know at least the right things to be doing it. You might not need me
Yeah.
to be there the entire time,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the way we kind of look at that. So it's very
Yeah.
interesting to hear that. So next question
Yeah.
then. So how do you keep educated? So if someone's doing your business or someone's following in your footsteps, how do you keep yourself, educated on the current trends? Like do you use any specific websites, or there's market intelligence reports you do? Is it
Yeah.
networking? What do you do?
Yeah. So I have number one is to kind of have a group of people around you, whether it's, a previous mentor or somebody that's in the industry that's been there for a while. So I kind of have that go-to person. And then I have my peers. And my peers are, sorry, is that being real fuzzy on you on your
It's
end?
okay.
My mic. Okay.
It's okay.
So yeah, so I have that one person that is above me, and then I have my peers that I do. Usually we meet kind of once a month on virtually, and I graduated with these people, and so we kind of all talk together on the stages of our business, where we're at, like continuing education credits. So I am required by the Association for Applied Sports Psychology to continue my education, and so that for me, a website that I go to is that because that's the more of the formal process. And so it's, taking courses online, doing different things to really educate myself and my skills.
Yeah, exactly right. So, so that could also lead into what are the expenses you're going to have to be paying as well. It's like once you become a coach, yes, you're investing all this money just to get your education, but to stay there, you are
Hmm.
going to be required, especially if you're licensed and stuff like that, to continue providing that particular service. You do have to consider that there's some annual costs that are going to be coming every single
Yes.
year, not just that. So, excellent. Okay,
Yes.
so let's talk about niches. So, someone's like fresh out. Let's say they get their certification and license, anything where it's mental performance can go into so many different ways, whether it's sports, not sports, whatever. Are there any particular niches that maybe you think that people can potentially get into if it's too broad that they're like, oh, I don't even know where to start? Is there something specific that might at least get them that short-term success to get some reps in before they start figuring out what they really want to focus on and then put all their eggs in that
Hmm.
basket?
Yeah. The important part I think about the niche, however you say it, is you have to think, and I don't want to say this in any type of like superficial way, but you have to think about what audience has the money to pay for your services. Because my passion for me, honestly, is to help other women. Like I know for women, um, we just a lot of us struggle with mindsets that keep us stuck. And that's my passion. But what I realized is there is a unique dynamic with women. For example, women are either married or if they're single, they're a single parent. It's a very small percentage of women that are single and have the finances to support what you do, what your services offer. The women that are married always tell me, well, I have to go check with my husband. And it's always that. And so I've kind of steered away from that and really oriented myself towards the population that does have the money to pay for my services. So whether that's business, some people might really like working with, CEOs, executives, people that are high up because they deal with pressure. It's just different. It's a different type of pressure. It's not, like they're going out on a baseball field and playing a baseball game. It's a constant life pressure. So that's one area I think that is going to be up and coming too is businesses hiring performance consultants and performance coaches to come in and help them. And then the other one is, what age group do you like working with? Like, do you like the college age? Do you like professional? Do you want to be in a team environment where you are maybe with professional sports teams, but you're accountable to that team? And then there's not to get too complicated, but then there's a lot of red tape with that because it's like, well, who's paying you? And then you have confidentiality and you have all these other components to it that you really have to go by, their regulations and their guidelines.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
let's say you're in charge of a little league team. Okay, I need to sign. I have to have these 20 NDAs signed by all the kids and their parents and all that sort of stuff.
mhm.
But even still, like you mentioned, it's not. Let's say if you want to, even from sports perspective, yeah, what level do you want to work with? Do you want to
Yeah.
work to like the professionals, or are you okay with Olympians or collegiate athletes, or
Hmm.
even little leagues, right? Because I think
Yep.
some, especially like rep or select level athletes for those age groups, those competitive ones, that's even something that maybe you can start on, especially if you like dealing with kids first off
Yeah.
and having to deal with potentially the parents, the
Yep.
helicopter coaching parents that think their child is the next Michael Jordan
Yeah.
or LeBron James or Sidney Crosby or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
So that's something you might have to consider yourself working with. So that's great here.
Yes.
So next
Yes.
question is, what should I do for what is the best billing practice I should be following? Should I do an hourly rate, a session, or a monthly rate, or
Hmm.
what would you suggest?
That's another big area that I've been navigating. And you talk about mistakes that you start out. So I started out with the idea that this is like mental health counseling, which it kind of is because it's in the same field in the same industry. But when you go to a mental health counselor, you pay them for the session, and then that's it. And then it's over, and then you typically schedule for another session. But that really limits your business capability. So I've found for me billing wise is initially there's a program and we do the program, and whether it's 6 sessions, 10 sessions, 12 sessions. I have a couple different options that I always offer. And that's the only option is you do this program. And then at the end of the program, giving that person, since you completed it, the opportunity, do you want to just go kind of like session by session, a la carte, like what, depending on where they're at, they get to choose that. But yeah, it's been the best um, scenario has been offering programs, and that's how I bill. And it's, you pay for it all up front. We do your sessions, and then you've completed the program, and then we carry on. Either they continue, or that frees up space and time for me to bring on a new client.
Absolutely. Like, I think the only thing I would always recommend to other business owners is for anything is if you could take if you could take any course, I would definitely suggest some type of sales slash customer service slash negotiation course. All of the
Hmm.
above. Just because when I was a trainer, because I think I'm going this back to my fitness days, a lot of personal trainers and instructors, they just want to help people, right? So
Hmm.
sometimes the best trainers are not necessarily the best business people, right?
Hmm.
So if you go to a client and say, okay, you need X number of sessions and it's $100 a session, first thing everyone's going to say is, oh, I can't afford it.
Hmm.
All right, how about $5? Right. So then you went from here and you went all the way down to here, as
Yes.
opposed to just having either a set program, or whether it's payment options, whether you're doing monthly payments or of
Yeah.
this big amount, or whatever the case may be. And,
Yep.
so having to work that and just figure that part out, because you don't want to
Yes.
undercut your services, right?
Yes.
Because if people have to remember, whatever business you're running, whatever expertise you have, it's not just the money to run your business, but the money you spent to get to where you were, or to get to where you
Hmm.
are.
Yep.
All that includes time, not just, oh, I paid $500 for this course and $500 for this course. Think
Hmm.
about how much you want to get paid on a per hour basis and be like, okay, so it's $500 plus another $500 worth of my time to
Hmm.
get to this course. So think about
Yes.
those things when you price it, and work on ways to find out. And if the client can't afford it, and maybe they're just not in your ideal client at this point,
Hmm.
right? I think one
Yep.
of the best tips I heard from one of my guests is that every session, because I think he does like motivational speaking, but I think he does more like self defense running programs, but more from like a higher level. So he's dealing with
Mm.
like colleges or women's groups and stuff like that. So what he does is, like, every time he gets paid for a speaking engagement, he allocates a certain percentage. He puts that in a slush fund. So should a client who can't afford his services but who he really wants to help, he just pays himself by pulling from that slush fund so he can still help those
Mm.
people that really require his services. So those are
Hmm.
some really good tips. And I think
Yeah.
Dr. Ross has some great tips for that as well. So, all right, next
Yeah.
question there. Now that we're doing mental performance, do we need any special insurance for that?
Yes. So a lot of what I do is, so through the Association for Applied Sports Psychology is kind of the ethical side that governs everything that I do. So I do have um, insurance to cover just the mental health counseling, the consulting, all of that, that side of the house, and then business insurance. So it's kind of like two parts to it, right? Because things could happen in your business that aren't necessarily associated with the other part of it. So two components. So I would definitely recommend the business insurance, and then covering yourself, uh, ethically speaking, in the event that somebody, wants to come after your license or certification or anything like that, to have that insurance. In fact, yeah, like the mental health counseling practice that I have contracted with requires it. So it's not like you can work without it. So,
Yeah. No,
mhm.
perfect. Now, I always ask this question to all my guests. What is the best strategy on dealing with difficult clients?
Mm. Difficult clients are, I always look at it, okay, this is an opportunity.
Ah, you're one of those. It's an
Yes,
opportunity.
it's an opportunity. I think communication is key, because you really have to look at it as, okay, if they're being difficult, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for either the resistance, the difficulty, right? And how do you get to the heart of that? What's at the root of that difficulty? And regardless of whether they want to work with you or don't work with you, it can be the impact that they have on the people around them, right? And the things that they say about you to other people. And it's like, you always want to leave that positive impact with people. And so even if they're being a difficult client, um, I kind of like to bring it out in the open in a way that obviously is not going to cause more conflict, but kind of just, I can see that you're having trouble with this. Like, let's talk about that. Right. And so it's bringing in that communication piece with difficult clients, and realizing that regardless of whatever business you're in, customer service is always going to be an important part of it. Um, yeah. So,
Absolutely. And the funny thing, the inside edge you kind of have is that you're also trained in psychology as well. So I think
mhm,
it's you can come at it from a different side than where the average person would be like, why is this person being difficult? The fact you might have extra tools in your toolbox just to deal with someone
mhm,
that's there. Now, it's not going to be 100% successful, right? Because if the
no.
person is hardened in the way they're believing things, and I always say that it's almost better to pre-screen them first before you really want to
Yes.
do business with them. Because
Yes.
if you don't like if they're this much of a pain just to become a
Mhm.
client, can you imagine the pain they're going to be as a client, right? That's going
Yeah.
to be very hard to deal with. So,
Oh,
uh,
absolutely.
yeah. So, Lexa, how do you work life balance yourself, right? Because you have family and you have your business. What are the
Mhm.
best tips you have for that?
I keep a very strict calendar. So, my calendar is constantly, you know, filling up and kind of managing that, but I will block out time for my family and time for me. And that's been the biggest thing for me is like, okay, no, like even though I could schedule them at this time, it's like, nope, that's my time with my kids. Like I can't go into that. I have to maintain that discipline. And it's hard as a new business because you're like, you're in this conundrum and this balance of I need clients, but at the same time, like I can't forsake quality time and whatnot with my family, and even time for yourself to reset, because especially in this field, in mental health and psychology, like you're dealing with a lot of heavy stuff and you need that time for yourself to kind of reset and prioritize your own mental health.
Yeah, exactly right. I always just say that if it ain't on the Google Calendar, it's not happening, right?
Yeah.
Because that is the challenge too, even from my own business as well. Because, could I save a lot of money if I did everything myself? Absolutely. But then I'm taking it away from my family, right? Especially my kids. My kids ask me, am I trying to be famous? And I said, well, I don't know if that's the goal of being famous, but, that's why, even though it is sometimes sucky that I have to pay an editor to do it,
Yeah.
I think it might make perfect sense because could I do it myself? Absolutely. But it would take me twice as long to do it when as
Yes.
opposed to let's say me recording these episodes, if I'm producing them and all these other things, it's taking me away from it. So that work-life balance has to be it. And so just but last question before we hit to the rapid fire round here, what has been the funniest story so far running your business that you've had?
Uh, um, hmm. I had a really interesting consult with somebody, right? Because I offer a 30-minute consult with anybody that's interested. And you talk about customer service and all this stuff, and it's really good. But during this consult, he was sharing his story with me, and I laugh at it now, but in the midst of it, it was very like, I don't know what I think about this. um, and so we ended up doing this consult, and it's a Zoom call, and he shows up and he's not wearing a shirt, right? So totally inappropriate. And then we start talking and I give him my pitch. And then at the end, he wanted to give me feedback for my services and what I had
Feedback.
feedback on my pitch. So it ended up being this business to business consult, which I have no problem doing. I love doing business. Like, let's talk business. Yes, like I'm all about that. Um, but it came down to him wanting to give me feedback and how I approach it. And in the middle of it, and we come back to the customer service. In the middle of it, I was just kind of like thrown back by it. Like, well, I thought he was going to be a client, and then he starts talking to me about my business approach. So to be honest,
It's like he was
was
trying to sell
kind
you almost.
yes, yes. So in the middle of it, I was just totally confused, and then afterwards, I was like, hold on a minute, and now I look back at the situation and I'm like, I should have known from the start. Like he wasn't even wearing a shirt on the Zoom call. Like what the, and you wonder like what goes through people's minds. But that was definitely, now it's funny for me because it's an interesting experience, but obviously in the middle of it, I was like totally like, I don't even know what to think about this right now. But yeah, you just have interesting because you're dealing with people and people are, sometimes you're just like, I don't even know how you came to that like conclusion. But
Yeah, like I remember this one person that I can't remember what one company was saying, "Hey, we want you to be on this magazine for like young entrepreneurs, in their 40s or started your thing." And you're thinking, "Okay, that's pretty cool." And you're starting to chat with them, and then they're talking about, "Yeah, so the fees would be about $1,000. We can put a picture of you in and on the blurb." I'm like, "Sorry, I have to
uh,
pay to be on this magazine?" I thought they were reaching out to me because they liked my show or they liked my thing, and
yeah.
they were just trying to sell me on it by
Mhm.
inflating my egos. Yeah, we love your show. We think it's like the best small business
Yep.
podcast right now. So we would love you to be in our magazine. So it's one of those really funny things. So all
Yeah.
right,
Hey you, do you need a voiceover? Well, look no farther. Northway Capital Group has your answer. Commercials and explainer videos, AVR and voicemail, health and wellness, corporate training and e-learning, announcements, documentaries, and biography. Contact us on social media or email us at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com. Now it's time for the rapid fire round.
rap rapid fire round. This is the fast, well, hopefully fast
Okay.
questions. We'll see how they
Last
have.
questions.
Okay,
Okay.
so are you ready?
Yes. Let's
All
go.
right. First question: would you rather put ketchup or ranch dressing on everything you eat?
Ketchup.
Ketchup. Okay. If you could have a sandwich, what would be in it and what would it be called?
Turkey and pepperoni. I don't know. Turkey pep.
Turkey pep. What kind of bread?
Oh, gluten-free
It's a
bread. I don't like.
sandwich unless you literally
I
just
don't
eat
like
meat.
bread. I would eat
Okay.
the meat and the
So
cheese.
it's meat and the cheese. So is there lettuce on it then instead as opposed to bread?
Yes, let's go with lettuce.
Lettuce. And it's called turkey pep. Okay, I got
Tur-
it. So what posters did you have on your wall when you were a kid?
I had a poster of a blue 1969 Camaro that I really liked, but that was about it. I don't think I put a whole lot. I had some pictures of friends, but that was it.
Yeah, I had like wrestling posters when I was a kid. I was really big into WWF or WWE then, and
Hmm.
had some cars and some hockey photos of like Wayne Gretzky and something like that. So I thought, oh, I get,
Hmm.
and I didn't because I didn't want to have the wall that had nothing on it, right? Because you watch TV shows, you see all these kids have posters. I'm like, I guess I can put a poster up.
Yeah,
Why not?
right?
But
Yeah.
but anyways, next question here. Who would you like to sit on a 10-hour flight?
Sit on a 10-hour flight.
Yeah, so who would you like to sit next to on a 10-hour
Sit next
flight
to.
and why?
Oh. Well, I'm big into sports, so maybe like LeBron James. I kind of want to pick his brain on
Yeah,
his expertise.
yeah, and I was gonna do mine is Dwayne the Rock Johnson, just because I like
Oh.
because if you think about it, maybe we'll just branch out this a little bit. You hear these elite athletes, right? Money is never an issue with them anymore. They make so much, right? And then I find when you see ones that they've already achieved up what you think is the highest part of the mountain,
Mhm.
and they keep wanting it. So from a professional athlete, it's like, oh, I want to win more championships. Or in the Dwayne the Rock Johnson's case, he's running leagues, he's running his businesses where he doesn't really have to. What do you
Mhm.
find as that thing that keeps them driven to continue to go at that level?
That's the good question. Or even another one is Tom Brady. I really, Tom
Yeah, he should
Brady
have retired
just
and then he comes back and wins a Super Bowl. And
yeah,
yeah,
but it is, and you listen to some of the, YouTube or documentaries on them, and they talk about, having that uh need to prove themselves. And I think that's where it starts, but then it just keeps going. And that's what I would want to know is like, what is it that keeps you driven to continually push for more?
yeah, because it's maybe because I'm a lame person, like I'm a layman person, right? Where I'm thinking, if I had that magic number, whatever it is, where it's
Yep.
10 million, if it's a financial perspective, it's like I don't have to do anything. What people it's called like screw you money, right? Where you could
Mhm.
kind of do almost anything you want. And I would be like, I used to joke that if I was lucky enough to win a world championship in anything, first thing I do, open up a school. So at least I now have that thing to fall back on, or do some more causes that you want to help other kids in, and or charity work, or work Habitat for Humanity, stuff like that. So it's interesting to hear some of those things, how they do that. So
Yes.
interesting. Okay, last question I always like to ask is, what is your theme song and why? So that song, you're walking down the street, that song hits, everyone knows Dr. Ross is coming.
I don't think I have one. I don't. I'm kind of all over the place with my music.
Any of them?
Depending any of them.
What gets you going?
Hmm. I was gonna say, let me pull up my YouTube, but depending on what mood I'm in, like if I'm at the gym and I want to be really motivated, like I have like what is it, AC/DC and some like hardcore rock stuff. If I'm kind of just chilling, like relaxing, I like a good old Shania Twain. I have Shania Twain on here. um, so I think it depends. I don't really have a song. That's a good
You have
question.
different genres, but no, that's a
I
good thing,
do.
right? Because
Yeah.
I think anyone can, like, it depends too. Like when I'm in the gym, it could vary, right? Because it could be rock, rap, or sometimes if I'm just doing cardio, I'm just listening to a podcast, right?
Yeah.
It could be a business podcast. It's not exciting to most people, right? And
Yeah.
then it was funny because I was actually getting some chiropractic work done on me, and I was listening to a business podcast, and my kids, someone took my headphones. I forgot to take it out of my thing, but my phone was still in the car. So I'm getting adjusted. My kids are playing my headphones, just listening to it because it's one of those two little
Oh
separate
yeah.
earbuds. So one of them had it on. So I'm there getting adjusted, and my son's like, "Hey, Dad, what's an intelligence panel?" I'm like, "What? Yeah, was this going on something from a lab?" Yeah. Um, I don't even know how to describe it to them, right? Just for the fact that we're listening to that is like, "Hey, Dad, what does GDP stand for?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, okay, I'll try to explain." And they're like I think our kids are very similar in ages, so
Hmm.
I think we're
Hmm.
8 to 10 years old, so it's really hard to try to explain that to them.
Yeah.
But it could be almost anything. So
Yeah.
no, that's okay. Like I like the fact you have different genres from Shania Twain to AC/DC. Which AC/DC song in particular?
Back in Black, I think it was. It's,
Yes, love
Highway
that
to
song.
Hell. Not the most positive stuff, but it
It
gets me
doesn't
going in
have
the
to be.
gym. Yeah.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
remember listening to like Wu-Tang Clan when I was just
Hmm.
in a very angry mood. I just want to listen to it. I was like, that's fine. And what my wife is cringes now, because let's say I'm in my almost mid 40s. And
Hmm.
sometimes if I'm cooking and I'm getting stuff ready, she comes home from the hospital. I might be listening to some like EDM music, those electro
Hmm.
dance thing. And it just
Yep.
gets me in the just relaxing mode. And she's looking at me,
Yeah.
she's like, you're not a young adult anymore, Ken. You're actually a, you know,
Right?
you shouldn't be listening to that kind of music. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is from my beautiful wife who knows no songs at all,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
No titles. But anyways,
Oh,
that's
that's
aside the
fun.
point. So
Yes.
last question. You'd be surprised how quickly this hour flew by. We're a little over an hour already into this show, which
Yeah.
is weird. But any other final advice you have for anyone wanting to get into your space or just business in general? Any other final tips, Dr. Ross?
I would say that whatever business it is, if you're starting your own business, realize it's going to be scary, but don't jump ship. Like just keep going. Because I will say that I've been tempted. Everyone's like, well, why don't you just go get a job
Get a job.
somewhere? And really, I'm like, well, why invest all that time and energy into somebody else's success when you could be doing it for yourself? So I would say just stick with it, and discouragement will happen. It's normal. Fear is normal. Being scared, it's all normal and a part of the process. You just have to keep going through it.
Excellent. Great, great, great final words on that, Dr. Ross. So, where can people reach out to you? Where can they find you? What's your social media handles, or how can they contact you?
Yeah, so my Instagram, I have my business is at Renew Mind Body. And there's a little link to my personal, which is Jenna Lynn _ IFBB Pro. And then my website is renewperformance.org. And Facebook, I have a page. It's called Dr. Jenna Ross. So you can find me on there. But yeah, and then I have a Twitter at Renew Mind Body, but I'm not always on Twitter. So
Yeah, no, that's great. At least you have a purpose for Twitter. I have no purpose for Twitter. I don't know what I can
yeah.
do with it, to be honest. Right? I mean, I don't. Yeah, just made myself a sandwich today. Tried the turkey pep.
The turkey pep on
You know
lettuce,
the one?
please.
Yeah, that's right. So I
With
don't know.
ketchup.
With ketchup. There we go. So thank you very much, Dr. Ross. It was a great episode. Thanks for being on the show.
Yes, thank you.
Do you have a small business story to share? The S.M.E Stories podcast is looking for entrepreneurs to share their tales of success, failure, and everything. If you're interested in being a guest on our show or know someone would be a great fit, please contact us at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com. That's northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening to the S.M.E Stories podcast, which is owned by Northway Capital Group. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Northway Capital Group.